Thank you, everyone. We moved the press conference inside today for the reporter's sake. Supposedly thunderstorms coming through, and we didn't want you, where you're positioned out there, if it's windy, you'll get hit with the rain, so I wanted to make sure we protect you. So thank you for being here today. Today, as we get set up here, we're going to provide updates on COVID-19, as well as our work to fighting systemic racism here in Boston. I'm going to start with our latest numbers. I have in Massachusetts, as of yesterday, the state reached a total of 108,667 cases, a one-day increase of 224 cases. The state has now confirmed 8,060 people have died from COVID-19. That's up from 19 the day before. In Boston, these are numbers as of today. We just updated them a moment ago. We have additional increase of one case, having our numbers 13,441 cases. 51 additional people have recovered. That brings our total to 9,384. And total number of people who have passed away due to COVID-19 was 4 as of yesterday. In total today, 709. As I've said from the very beginning of the coronavirus, our thoughts and prayers go out to those who are still struggling from this illness, and we still have people struggling from this illness, and to the families who lost loved ones, our prayers are with you. Normally heading into the 4th of July weekend, I'd be talking about grill safety and violence prevention, and those are certainly important issues, but I'm sharing those messages again this week, and we're going to have a more deeper conversation in a couple of days. But this year there'll be the safety issues, COVID-19. This is traditionally a weekend for gathering in large groups, for historic ceremonies and social events. This is not something that we can do this year here in Boston or in Massachusetts. Our City of Boston Independence Day celebrations are going to be completely online, and for everyone's 4th of July plans need to be limited as well. If you're going to have a cookout, we're asking you to keep your gatherings small and keep them to your family units. We're asking people continue to wear face coverings and keep your social distancing of 6 feet away from each other. I'm also asking people to continually wash your hands with soap and warm water as you move forward, or use hand sanitizer. If you go somewhere and the crowd is larger than expected, my suggestion is that you turn around, make new plans. Tell folks that you're concerned about your senior relatives and your neighbors and your friends. I know that it's not easy scaling back on certainly summer traditions, especially after all that we've been through with this year. But again, we can look at what's happening in other parts of the country. All weekend long I was monitoring Florida and Texas and Arizona, in California, and all of those numbers just continue to rise at incredibly high numbers. And in many of those places, the people that are being most impacted are people between the ages of 30 and 40 years old. So we need to continue to make sure we take precautions. We've seen scenes, people socializing in large groups without precautions. We've seen major surges in hospital capacity, hospitals being pushed to the limit around the country. And the economies are getting shut down again in those states that did shut down for a short period of time. We certainly here in Boston and Massachusetts, we don't have to take that path. We have collectively done an incredible job here, in my opinion, and we must continue to be diligent, and we must enjoy new opportunities to restore our economy. I'm urging every single resident and business owner to take COVID-19 as seriously as you ever have. We need everyone to be part of this effort. In the City of Boston, we continue to work hard to protect the health and safety of all of our residents. We're basing our decisions on science. We're monitoring the data here in Boston, including the inequities across the demographics and neighborhoods. We're bringing health and financial resources to where they need them. You are not on your own in this, and that's something that I think has been from the very beginning. We are committed to providing you with the information and the resources that each and every person needs. I'm going to ask Chief of Health and Human Services, Marty Martinez, to come up here right now for a moment and talk about some of the work that his department he is doing. Chief Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. The City Health and Human Services and the Boston Public Health Commission continue to work daily to combat COVID-19 and address the needs of all of our neighbors. We remain focused on containing the spread of COVID by testing, tracing, and supporting those who test positive, and promoting protective measures like wearing a face covering and creating physical distance between you and others to keep people safe. And as we have been since the start of this pandemic, we are focused on those most disproportionately impacted by the disease and the inequities that have played out. It's at the core of our work. And a key part of that work has been about how we recover and how we ensure, to the mayor's point, that the data and science drives us. We're monitoring key indicators that are central to our ability to keep Bostonians healthy and safe in these times. From our new case numbers to our positive testing rate to hospitalizations, we're looking at trends and any signs of new COVID activity. We continue to see a solid 14-day decrease in cases and a 7-day decrease as well. While the decrease is flattening, we are seeing very low case numbers continue, which is a good sign. In the last 18 days, we've only had one day where we've had over 30 cases. Our work is paying off to prevent new infections. We've also had one of our lowest positive case rates last week at 1.9% positive for the entire week, with a cumulative rate of 17.7% for COVID testing in general. While we have increased the numbers of people getting tested over the past few weeks, we continue to see a decline in the positive test rate. Again, a good sign of progress. And our hospital ICU capacity in Boston was at 78% of capacity yesterday, which is down from a high of 136% of capacity at its peak in April. This means that hospitals are ready and able to take care of those who have the most severe impact. We hope to get people out of the hospital and out of the ICU so they can take care of others. All of these signs continue to show that we're containing the spread of COVID and keeping people safe and healthy through our shared efforts. But, and that's a big but, we need to continue working together to keep these rates down and keep our numbers of new infections and death down. And this continues to mean that we're looking not only at all of our continued efforts that we must focus on, but also on the inequitable impact that COVID has had in our Black and brown communities. With African American population representing 37% of all cases, while only representing about a quarter of the city population as a whole, and with Latinos still testing at the highest rate of any community at 30% of all folks getting tested, testing positive, we continue to be focused on creating greater access to testing, ensuring we have culturally competent messaging to reach our diverse communities, and to ensure that we're working to support those who are most impacted. This is why we've increased testing in key zip codes and ensure that we're investing in resources to connect people to care and support our community health centers as well. We must not lose focus on the inequities that exist and that have been central to our response from the very beginning. So as many other states and cities encountered increased cases and rates, we have to stay diligent and focus on what we need to do to collectively fight COVID. I remain concerned about its impact and urge us to stay cautious and vigilant as we continue to reopen. The City, Health and Human Services, and the Health Commission will not lose sight of those most impacted as we continue down this path of recovery. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Marty. And I just can't stress the importance of, as we reopen, and the conversations that we're having in the city of Boston, whether it's restaurants or barbershops or salons or schools, the importance of staying very attentive to making sure that we take care of our individual health by wearing face masks and keeping social distancing. This has been a very long journey, if you will, for us here in Boston and Massachusetts in this country with COVID-19. And in order for us to continue moving forward, we can't lose sight of all the incredible work that's been done, and we can't also lose sight of all of the people that have lost their life because of COVID-19. And so I just want to continue. We're going to continue to move forward here. I'm also going to provide an update on our equity work as it relates to COVID-19 and all the ways that we're working together to end racism and making positive change. I want to start with the issues of housing security, because it's a pressing issue right now, and it's certainly part of our equity conversation that we're having in the city. There was a report released this weekend about the threat of widespread evictions. Many of the news outlets picked up on it. After the federal unemployment relief runs out and our state eviction moratorium ends, we are going to be happy to provide the data for that report, because we've been tracking these needs and working to meet them for quite some time here. By creating our Office of Housing Stability, and by investing in affordable housing, and by advocating for greater tenant protections. The budget approved last week expands that work with $60 million of new investment, and we filed several bills that are currently at the in the legislature right now to protect tenants and increase housing stability. We have a bill that guarantees tenants of buildings the right to buy that building with a nonprofit partner if that building goes on the market. We have a bill that protects elderly tenants from evictions and displacement. And we have a bill that guarantees tenants facing eviction the right to legal representation, just like criminal defendants get. That continues to be a priority, and I support a bill filed by State Senator Sal DiDomenico to pilot the right to counsel for tenants impacted by COVID-19. That's a situation where a lot of times somebody's being evicted, they go to court, they don't have a lawyer, and they don't have the right for representation. If they can hire a lawyer and bring a lawyer with them, they could. But most of these people, they can't. They're being evicted for failure to pay rent, and they don't have the ability to hire a lawyer in that particular case. The COVID crisis changed the legislative landscape, but the housing stability has never been more important. We are facing profound economic uncertainty right now, and thousands of families, seniors, and workers are facing profound housing inequities and insecurities. We need to do everything we can to support our residents through this crisis and beyond. We've made $8 million available for renter relief to those not eligible for unemployment insurance. As of last week, we've distributed over $1 million of those funds to cover rent for hundreds of households all across the city of Boston. And we continue to distribute these funds as needed. But relief is only one part of our response. As a Commonwealth, we need to protect families and our communities from the threat of eviction and displacement. So I'm asking the state to extend the eviction moratorium for as long as it takes to protect housing stability here in the city of Boston, but also throughout the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And whatever supports are necessary to protect landlords from foreclosures and other harms. Rep. Kevin Honan from Brighton and Rep. Mike Conley's bill extended the moratorium for 12 months and adds relief for landlords. Housing insecurity is clearly an issue of racial equality as well as general economic disruption. Our data shows that communities of color are more vulnerable to evictions and burdensome rents. And that is due to large part to history of being excluded from housing opportunities that took place all across our country, not just here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It's another reason why we have to take a deeper look inside of our systems to root out the racist legacy, rebuild those systems, and to create equitable opportunities as we move forward here. That's the reason we declared racism a public health crisis here in the city of Boston, and that's the reason why we're reviewing all of our policing policies right now. And it's the reason why that our fiscal year 2021 budget makes record investments in closing opportunity gaps in our Boston Public Schools, as well as record investments in affordable housing for low-income families. Driving this work is the mission of the Equity Cabinet that I announced last week. The Cabinet will bring together the departments that address overlapping inequities of race, ethnicity, immigration, language, and gender. It will apply an equity lens to make sure that everything city government does is dismantling systemic racism and creating fair opportunity for all Bostonians. So the Chief of Equity is going to be somebody with a significant influence on how to operate as the city is moving forward. This is an extremely important appointment, an important moment right now for the city of Boston. We need somebody who can hit the ground running, someone who understands, not just knows the community, but understands the community, someone who understands city government and how City Hall works, and I'm confident that we have found the right person to lead this work. I am pleased to announce today Boston's first ever Chief of Equity is Dr. Carolyn Crockett. Carolyn is a brilliant innovator and change maker. She is someone who lifts up community voices and brings their power and perspective to the halls of government, business, and academia. Carolyn has already had an immense impact right here in the city, in this administration. I have learned a great deal from her over the years, and many of the folks that work here in City Hall and who no longer work here in City Hall can say the same. Carolyn spent 4 years as the Director of Economic Policy Research and Small Business Development in this administration for the City of Boston. In that role, working with Chief John Barrows, she led Boston's first ever citywide small business plan and Boston's first economic equality and inclusion agenda. Among her many accomplishments was strengthening our residency job policy, where we changed the numbers to reflect the community of Boston, which helps us leverage our city's growth to create more opportunities for women and people of color in the construction industry. Carolyn is a proud product of our Boston black community right here. She grew up in Dorchester, attended Boston Public Schools for most of her K-12 education. She went on to Yale University, where she earned 3 degrees, including a PhD in American Studies. After college, she founded a program called My Town, an organization that hires high school students to research local histories and create walking tours. It's created over 300 youth jobs and was named one of the 10 best youth humanity programs in America by the National Endowment for the Humanities. She's a leading scholar of equity and urban planning here in Boston. She's published a groundbreaking book a couple years ago, People Before Highways. It has changed our understanding of urban renewal, putting the community at the center of the story. And for the last 2 years, she's been a lecturer in public policy and urban planning at MIT. She understands the root of racial inequality and the tools we need to break it down. She's passionate about the strength that exists within our communities to lead the work when systemic barriers are removed. Carolyn is an example of the excellence we have in Boston's neighborhoods, the talent we must create opportunities for if we are to truly thrive as a city. When she has done that with excellence, to lift up community as many others in many other neighborhoods and working like what she's done. Sorry about that. This is what she's going to continue to do in this role. And by doing that, she's going to help us lead the nation. Before I bring up Dr. Carolyn Crockett as our first Chief Equity Officer, she asked me a question the other day, and she said, I'm honored to be asked about this role, but she said, what's your commitment in this work? And what I said to her was, my door is open, literally open, and any time that she has a question or an obstacle or a barrier that needs to be torn down, we will tear it down together. And I'm honored to present to you Dr. Carolyn Crockett.
Thank you, Mayor. We recognize the land that we stand on as the traditional indigenous territory of the Massachusetts Nation, who continue through their lineal descendants, the Massachusetts tribe at Ponkapog. In acknowledging the land, we recognize the tribe as our host, and we agree to be good guests. For far too long, Boston City Hall has been an agent of racism, exclusion, and old crony gatekeeping of the city's prosperity and power, not recognizing your abilities, not recognizing your contributions, not recognizing your skills, not recognizing your leadership, not recognizing your power, your voice, your rights. Today is a somber day to recognize this painful and enduring truth. Today is also a day to state a new kind of pledge to listen and move toward change. What good is it to hear that you live in a prosperous and thriving city if you can't get a job, or if you can't advance in your career, if you can't find affordable housing, if you can't get the health care you need, if you can't take advantage of the city's vast educational and cultural resources? What good is it to hear that you live in a prosperous and thriving city if you can't access the building we stand in to get the services you need and that your taxes have already paid for? What good is it to hear that you live in a prosperous and thriving city if you can't get the information you need in the language you prefer, or if you can't enjoy the city's resources regardless of your immigration status? What good is it to hear that you live in a prosperous and thriving city if you are not confident that you or your children can travel the city streets safely? What good is it to hear that you live in a prosperous and thriving city if the racial wealth gap prevents you from passing on wealth and prosperity to your children and their children? This city is my home. I am born and raised a daughter of the dot. Dorchester is in my veins and in my heart. My family, like many other Black families, left the South and headed north to Boston in search of economic opportunity and a better life. But they did not find that here. They found a city that was closed to their dreams, their abilities, and their needs. So like many families then and now, my family strengthened its resolve. The resilience, fortitude, and organizing of these families and so many mothers and grandmothers and women who hold our city together every day when cooler heads do not prevail. My grandmother, Mrs. Mary Crockett, was one of 57 plaintiffs named alongside Tallulah Morgan in the now famous Morgan versus Hennigan case. May these dear, dear women rest in power. As we all know, this 1972 class action suit paved the way for Boston's tumultuous attempt at school desegregation. It was Black parents and their children who fought for all of us to push toward racial reconciliation and healing at school and at home. Boston City Hall and its leaders stood in the way of this historic and visionary work. In that moment of school desegregation or forced busing, depending on how you view this period, our city stood in a fiery state of crisis. Today, we find ourselves facing yet another set of storms. The twin crises of the coronavirus pandemic and America's unfinished racial reconciliation have us all feeling raw, vulnerable, and exposed. The question is, what will we do? Do we have the moral and political will to confront and heal our most difficult and enduring wounds? Do we have the will and the courage to dream new dreams for populations long denied what we actually deserve? I believe we do, but my own faith is not enough. I need everyone standing here with me and within the hearing of my voice to be bold and move beyond what we may individually think is possible. When Tallulah Morgan and the Boston branch of the NAACP dared to dream a bigger dream for us all, we failed to deliver. We stand right now in a frightening and promising moment to right our past wrongs. The people of Boston are marching in the streets right now and demanding more because they deserve more. Equity is about delivering a corrective fix to right wrongs. For Boston's Black, Indigenous, immigrant, Latinx, and Asian communities, racial justice and economic inclusion are not new concerns. These legacy populations have built and sustained the city of Boston when it could not sustain itself. What's new here is government's willingness to listen and include itself in conversations, agendas, and policy setting that matter to us and hold the promise of a more liberatory future. This is an act of conclusion. So, Mr. Mayor, welcome to the conversation. The struggle and the table set by the residents who elected you is ready, and is now. I am honored to support this mission by bringing my heart and soul to the work of leading the Equity and Inclusion Cabinet. I am humbled and honored for the opportunity to directly support the talented team of executive leaders behind me: Donnie Tavares, Lori Nelson, Yusufi Vali, Evandro Carvalho, and Tanya Del Rio. These leaders have been working hard to elevate equity in all aspects of the city's work, and my job is to support and strengthen what we already know is working. We have tremendous work to do, and I'm ready for it. Thank you all for being here today to mark this important day. And Mr. Mayor, thank you for everything that we are about to make possible together. Thank you.
Let me, first of all, Carolyn, welcome, thank you. Excuse me. Just real quickly before I open up for questions, I just want to also, Carolyn did this already, but I want to introduce the people behind me for those of you that don't know who they are. To my right, your left, Tanya Del Rio is our second ever head of women's advancement in the city of Boston, working on issues around equity and child care and a whole bunch of programs in our office. And I want to thank Tanya for being here with us today. Next to Tanya is Yusufi Valet, who is the director of immigrant advancement, the second director ever of that office, who has done amazing work, particularly in the last 3 years. This office really has been about not only advancing immigrants, but protecting immigrants as well with the threats from Washington, D.C. Next to Yusufi is Laurie Nelson, who is in charge and running our office, the mayor's office of race and inclusion, and also working with the Rockefeller Foundation and 100 Resilient Cities, and keeping that work on an outward level real here in the city of Boston. Next to Laurie is Donnie Tavares, sorry, Donnie. Donnie Tavares is the first ever Chief of Diversity in the city of Boston. And Donnie's role is to make sure that as we think about hiring here in the city and also promotions here in the city, his office has been working on not just helping make sure people get placed, but keeping those numbers. I want to thank you for that. And Armando Carvalho is the head of our Human Rights Commission. That office was established, I believe, under Mayor Flynn. Had a little bit of a hiatus after Mayor Flynn, and so we reintroduced that office, and we're working now in that space. And all of these different departments, along with language access, is going to be working with Carolyn on a daily basis. But the work they do is really important, and they continue to do this work every day. So I want to thank them all for being here today. With that, I'll open up for questions. If anyone has a question for me, Marty, or Carolyn, please feel free. We'll start this way and go that way. First I heard of it. Okay, I'll get more information on you. I haven't heard that. I don't know if any... No, it's first I've heard of it. So I'll find out. I would expect the commissioner. I was with him today. He didn't tell me. I'll get the information on that.
There was a council president mentioned that some of the council had been vandalized. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, vandalism is unacceptable. Trying to get a message across by targeting people's homes in their personal space is wrong. There were several councilors that experienced some sort of vandalism in their home. And you know, that's not the way to get messages across. Certainly, what I just say to everyone listening today, collectively as a municipal government, we are listening more than ever for a call to action. And we're responding by taking action. I don't think there's any city council, including myself, we might have different ways of getting to a solution, but none of us differ on the understanding of the issues in front of us. So I'd ask people, do not vandalize people's homes. City councilors have families. Some of them have small children. They have neighbors, and that's just unacceptable here in the city of Boston. I'll have to check that and see if there were I don't know who took complaints out or not.
Talk about evictions a little bit, but what's your message to people who are very worried right now that you may get evicted or $600 supplemental income is going to disappear?
We created, the question is about what's my message to people that might be concerned about evictions in the city of Boston. I can't speak to the state. We created the Office of Housing Stability exactly for that reason. So I would suggest to anyone that's concerned about evictions, call 311, ask for the Office of Housing Stability, go on boston.gov, you can look it up. We have people available to help you right now, any situation. Don't wait until later on. Call now. If anyone has any concerns at all, please reach out to our office, and that's what that office is created for. Say it again? Who is? Oh, I'm sorry, okay, I didn't hear.
Having a meeting regarding the fireworks issue. From what we understand, it's still an ongoing issue. What's your message to the people of Boston and also for the people who say this is a form of protest?
Yeah, the question is, Councilor Flynn's having a meeting tonight in South Boston about fireworks. I think other councilors have had meetings as well in areas in the city of Boston. You know, and then as far as a form of protest, I think that fireworks were going off before any type of protests were happening in the city. And I'd ask people to respect the community, respect the families. As I said from this podium before in the past, that when you light up, these aren't fireworks. Some of these are explosions. It sounds like we're asking you to respect your community. There are children, small children. The families, mothers and fathers are having a hard time with their small children. It's affecting the elderly. It's affecting our veterans. We've already had cases and heard cases of PTSD. It's affecting our animals. It's affecting the pets. You know, they're not funny. It's not fun. We put together a committee last week to look at the fireworks. We're going to have a meeting this week. I invited all 4 citywide councilors on that committee, along with community residents, to have conversations about this. You know, and this isn't a Boston problem, quite honestly. This is in some cases, a countrywide problem. I've talked to other mayors around the country that are experiencing the same situations, certainly in Massachusetts. But I'm going to just say that the people that are selling the fireworks, and they're definitely being sold illegally here, if we find you, we're going to confiscate them, and if you have large amounts of fireworks and you're selling them to communities, you will be arrested. It's something that we're going to take very seriously, and we've already confiscated in the city of Boston, at least I think I've seen on reports 3 or 4 times that the police have confiscated large amounts of fireworks, and there's been confiscations around the state. I've seen it. I believe in Malden might have had a confiscation in some other places. So we're going to be watching and monitoring that situation, and we're going to talk more about it later this week.
Summertime now. The Curly Community Center is closed, so I know a lot of the residents in that area are upset that some people are urinating around their homes, that sort of thing. I know that the restrooms are closed and there's no porta potties. Is there any solution to that?
Well, first and foremost, the people using the beach, somebody's front yard is not a bathroom. And it's not incumbent upon the city of Boston to provide a bathroom for you, especially with COVID. We're asking people to be careful. Right now, our Curly Community Center is closed for a reason, because of COVID-19. We haven't even started summer camps yet, and we're being very cautious of that. And eventually, we're going to be opening up some of our facilities for our kids. And, you know, we're asking people that take precautions. And you know, M Street Beach is a state beach, however. It's next to a city park. We've had some initial conversations about porta potties, but nothing's been finalized there. But we're asking people, you shouldn't be, if you get caught urinating in somebody's yard, you get arrested for that. Have respect for the people around you. You know, you're not supposed to drink on the beach either, and I know that people are drinking on the beach, so it's a public beach.
How many council members were hit, and what kind of vandalism was it?
Several of them, and I don't have the exact specifics on what was going on. I've heard glue and paper on some of the houses, and then some other stuff that was put on other houses. So we'll have to get that to you.
What the reason was for it?
Allegedly, because I think it's the budget, voting for the budget, and that's not the way to respond. If you have a concern about the way a budget moves forward, you know, the budget that we passed last week, the City Council passed, is a good budget. We make large investments and a lot of good programming. And if that budget didn't pass last week, we would be in a far different place. And I think that the people, whoever's responsible for this, I'm not sure who it is, needs to take a good look and see exactly the work that's been done in the budget. I would suggest that they take a few minutes to read the budget and see some of the great investments in that budget into mental health services and recovery services, and into schools and into trauma counseling, into our executive order on race. $3 million goes directly to help create that. There's a lot of good investments in that budget. And again, vandalizing and approaching somebody's home, I've never been a fan of that. Even when I was a labor activist back in the day, I never thought approaching somebody's home was the right call. People can come here to City Hall if they want. If they're disgruntled about a city councilor or a vote or the mayor's office, you can call, or you can call 311. We'll connect you, or you can show up here if you would like.
Thanks, everyone.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. I'm going to run down.